This is Hemet.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast to support the show. Hello.
Hi. Long time no see. Listen, the dynamic is weird right now because we hung out last night for a long time.
Which is weird.
Which is weird for
when there's
us.
no microphone in front of our faces.
Yeah, so, I mean, thankfully your wife was there as a buffer, so I could talk to her when you were ignoring me.
Yes.
Which makes life easier.
We watched Survivor, so to the one person who's very mad that we talked about Survivor, it's done after this episode.
Justice for Owen and Cassidy. Fuck Gabler, I'm saying it right now and forever.
This means nothing to 99% of the people listening.
Deal with it.
Yes.
Deal with it, nerds. I have to hear about fucking sports all the time. You hear me talk about a very popular TV show.
There you go. Okay, this story, I've been waiting for like a week to talk about this because it happened, I think, right after we taped last time. I feel like someone just said, hey, check out this story in my hometown, and you need to look into it. And then I start looking into the story. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, damn, what's going on down there? Long story short, within like 5 minutes, I reach out to the person at the center of the story, and within by the next day, we're having a phone chat, and she's delightful. Okay, so here's the story. This woman named Emily Olson just got elected to the city council in a town called Owosso, Michigan. And it's one of those tiny Gilmore Girl-esque towns as far as I can figure out, minus all the liberalism.
Oh, sure. That's also Stars Hollow.
So here's her deal. She moved, I guess she must have gone to the city for whatever reason a while back.
Well, she was at the beginning of a romance movie, so she had to move to the city, become a high-powered lawyer.
Yes, and then she visits the small town. She's like, I love this small town. Uh-huh. And then she ends up moving there with her husband last year. So when she gets there, she opens up a local store. She's selling whatever it is you sell in local stores.
Is this a romance novel?
Yes. And then she begins a group for progressive women called the Fair Mavens. I forgot what that's a reference to, but Fair Maidens, ha ha ha. And then within a short time, she gets to know a lot of the people in the community, and she decides to make a run for the city council. Okay. She gets ingratiated into, is that the right word? Yeah. Part of this town.
They ingratiate her into their...
Yeah. Really quickly. So she runs for one of the 4 open city council seats. I think 7 people ran for the seats.
Is there a residency?
She was fine.
Oh, okay.
She's allowed to. But basically, she's the sort of person you want to have on the city council because she's literally someone who chose to live there as opposed to someone who just happens to live there.
And seems to be laying down roots. Building community.
And cheerleads for the town wherever she goes. So, she runs for the council. I think she took second place out of all the seats. Nice. She made it on the city council. Fantastic. So, in the lead up to that, she goes to sit in at a city council meeting, making sure, is this the thing I really want to campaign for? Do I want to be a part of this? And she was surprised because even though she's hardly some sort of atheist activist or anything, she's like, oh, that's weird. You guys say an invocation prayer at the beginning of these meetings, and I'm pretty sure they're all Christian. And also you say the Pledge of Allegiance, which is another kind of Christian prayer with the under God thing.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't there a big Muslim population in Michigan?
In certain parts of it, yeah. All but not this one.
Okay.
And so anyway, she gets elected, and their first meeting is, I think, just before Thanksgiving. And so she gets elected. She's there. A lot of the people, I assume, who show up at these meetings don't necessarily know her. But one of the first things she brought up ahead of time when they do their, here's what we're going to put on the agenda, but before we're facing the public, they have those meetings, was the idea that, hey, look, if this is just a tradition we're carrying over, and I swear, when I talked to her about this, I was like, oh, yeah, if they're doing a Christian-only invocation, that needs to go, or you need to make sure everyone's aware that you don't have to be Christian to deliver the invocation. She comes into it from I don't think they realize, because they've been just doing this a long time, maybe you don't realize, this is kind of not cool for non-Christians. And by the way, a lot of people in our community do not identify as Christian.
Sure.
And so maybe you think this is just a nice tradition, but it actually rubs some people the wrong way. I'm going to do you a favor and bring that up.
My sweet summer child.
Yes.
Oh, Emily. Emily, listen. We love you. You need to listen to our back catalog. This is going to go poorly for you, my my sweet angel.
So during the meeting, she raises the issue again when it's that part of the agenda where she basically says, I think we should get rid of the prayer at the beginning of our meetings. One other person on, I think, the 7-person city council is on her side and says we should replace it with the moment of silence.
Sure.
Totally fine. So she did that. That's one thing to keep in mind.
Okay.
The second thing is at the beginning of the meeting, before she mentioned that, during the Pledge of Allegiance, she turned her chair to face the flag when it was time to say it, but she didn't stand up. She did not say the pledge.
Which is her right
which
as an
is
American.
absolutely her right.
Which I believe they're pretty into individual rights up in Michigan.
So she doesn't stand for the pledge, and people are like, who's this person? Then she says, maybe we should get rid of the invocation prayer, and then they bring out the pitchforks.
I swear to God, this is a movie I've seen.
It's on Lifetime right now. Yeah, and one of the things she said, because when another council member said, we're going to keep the prayer, and they all very much applauded, she says, I can tell everyone fervently applauded at the idea of keeping the prayer, and I just question, what is it that is lost by making the room more inclusive? Where's the harm? I respect everybody's religion. I just don't know that it belongs at the outset of a government meeting. Anyway, so yes, she's saying all the right stuff, but also, as people who have talked about this for many years, it's like, oh no.
Oh, I
this
really
is not gonna
just
end
want to
well.
give her a hug.
I
like,
know.
not in a condescending way, in a way of like, of course you went in eyes open thinking like, hey, maybe you got, like, she gave them the benefit of the doubt.
Yes.
And
So, at one point, one of the other council members chimes in, and I will spoil this real quickly. Not everyone's on board with this.
What?
Yeah, I know. One of the council members said if we removed the prayer, it would be, and I'm quoting, exclusionary to Christians.
Oh, that is true because they would have to move up the Islamic prayer, like alphabetical order, right? So they'd move up the Islamic prayer. Well, the Hindi prayer is first.
Right.
I mean, it is a whole thing. He is right. It would be extremely unfair to Christians.
Very unfair.
Thank you, sir.
Proving yet again that these Christian nationalists think neutrality is oppression. The same guy later said, well, this is a Christian city. To which...
Hey, sir. Hey, sir, can I just point you once again to the First Amendment?
To which Emily Olson chimes in and says, politely, I'm paraphrasing, you're basically reinforcing what I just said about getting rid of the prayer because it's excluding a lot of people.
Is this on video?
It is definitely on video.
Boy.
But I will say, the reason I didn't just take out one clip is because this is like a 10-minute, 20-minute discussion that doesn't have one soundbite here and there.
You don't want us to just sit quietly and listen to it?
I thought about it. I definitely thought about it. Another guy said
it's a slow news week.
Same dude says to her, you need to basically respect our traditions. He says, when you go visit a friend's house, if they ask you to take your shoes off, you do. To which Emily Olson said kind of there and also to me, this is the city council. Everyone owns this house, which, yeah.
I mean, well, and I do. That's why I asked about the residency thing right up front, because I was like, whatever this woman is going to do, somebody is going to tell her that she doesn't belong here. And so I was curious if they were going to try to pull something like that.
I know. If she were a browner woman, you wonder.
Yeah.
So the mayor then chimes in and says, in my 7 years, I'm paraphrasing, in my 7 years on the council, no one has ever told me, quote, they felt excluded by having prayer.
First of all, 7 years is not that long.
It's not that long. But to which Emily says, basically, how many times... She wondered this. She didn't challenge him right then and there. But, like, how many times have you been asked about this?
Of course not.
Because you say no one's ever come to me about this issue. Why would they feel safe? Why would they feel comfortable coming to you knowing clearly where you stand on the matter? And anyway, so this happens. The mayor's like, you know what? We're going to take a vote on this like right now. Do we keep the prayer or not? They vote 5-2 to keep the prayer in place. Emily Olson voted against it. So did her ally, suggested the moment of silence. And then the mayor, because he's not done being Elon yet, says like, and now I'm going to forbid this topic from ever coming up again during the next 2 years of my term. forbid.
Can he do that?
He can, I guess.
And if he can, I feel like he should probably use his power for good and not utter pointlessness.
You know those people who you give them a little bit of power and they run crazy with it?
Yeah,
That's
they're
this
called
dude.
white men. Like, what are you talking about? Like, petty tyrants run amok in city councils.
So none of this.
Sorry,
is-
white men, don't at me anymore. I'm
None of
tired.
this is why I got in touch with her.
Oh.
This was, to me, I read that story in a local paper, like where she was challenging the prayer tradition. I'm like, okay, I've seen that before. I hope she's all right. Then I
Heaven
saw,
is not impressed.
I'm like, I've seen this story before. Interesting, but okay, what else is happening? Then I see the second story. Here's where it gets insane. A blogger, local blogger, some guy, writes her a letter and hands it to her, I believe, at the second city council meeting, which happened earlier this month, like a couple weeks after that first one.
Okay.
At the beginning of the meeting, he hands her like a letter, and I think she opens it up, sees that there's a lot of writing on it, and says, all right, I'm closing this now. I will read this later. Fine, which I think set this guy off a little bit. But when she read it, here is what this guy, Tom, wrote to her.
Is it handwritten or typed?
Oh, it is handwritten.
Oh, it's not like cut out of magazine,
Not-
the little serial killer letters?
Should have been,
That would've
wasn't.
been very funny.
He basically, okay, I'm going to read this part of this letter. Because imagine you're Emily and you get this letter.
I am.
And I just
We
want to
are
point
all
out
Emily.
that Tom, the guy who's handing her this letter, is a tall guy, older guy, white, wears like a hat and a coat and whatever. Here's what the letter, hold that thought. Here's what the letter says. I was given a vision. A very detailed vision. My observation point in the vision was from your back parking lot. It's cold out. Winter. You have a coat on. You are leaving your store. Your back is to the parking lot and you are locking the door. A man, 5'10", 50 to 60-ish, white, neatly dressed, wearing an overcoat and dress hat, walks up to you from the north side. You see him. You know him. You smile. And without saying a word, he shoots you.
Oh, no.
He calmly walks away and leaves in a dark-colored vehicle. Hands her this letter.
My fucking God, this man is threatening to kill her.
And again, he is a man who fits the description of the guy he just mentioned in his
that's
vision.
why I said
and he
he's
drives the car.
threatening to kill her. Let's not pretend that's anything else.
I know. And he says, oh, no, I would never send a threat. I had a dream about this. God spoke to me through the dream. I'm trying to warn you.
Oh.
That's his take on this.
Sure, and that was a really chill way to do that, dude.
Mm-hmm. So at that point, I'm like,
God.
oh, my God.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. In the end, I just want to remember, the end of it says, and he shoots you, walks away calmly. End
he
of letter?
shoots you. He calmly walks away and leaves in a dark-colored vehicle.
And that's the end of the letter.
I don't remember if that was the end of it.
So there's no, like, be careful? Like, that's what I'm wondering. It's like, is it just like,
I don't
there
have it
you
in
go,
front of
go
me,
fuck
so
yourself.
I don't know. Yeah. But she reported it to law enforcement. But as she's talking to friends in the community, and she does have friends in the community, there. First of all, I believe one of the comments was, I don't think the cops are going to help you because they're like buddy with this Tom guy.
Wait.
And also, everyone's like, oh, Tom, he's the village like kook. And it's like, no, this is not some cute, creepy dude. This is not okay, and this is scary.
I mean, the layers of it, the layers of the Christian entitlement and the toxic masculinity, and oh my God, these people are fucking off.
A newspaper
their
there,
rocker.
the Argus Press, they also reported, this is almost a afterthought in their article, they didn't mean it that way, but it was. This is not the first time the guy has done shit like this. Apparently, a little while back, he told a local school board member, I guess they had a situation in the district where there was a school building that was going unused, and the board was trying to figure out, what do we do with this property that our district owns? Like, how do we sell it? How do we do? What's the best process? And he apparently told a board member that she would, quote, face God's wrath unless they sold that former school to a church in the area. So, like, this guy this is what he does.
What Jesus had in mind.
According to every mega cultist I've ever heard from, yes.
God will strike you down? God's wrath.
God's wrath. Yeah.
I mean, don't you wasn't God's wrath just kind of saved for the big ends, like the Noah's storm
Oh
thing?
no, God
or
goes
is it just
after
always the wrath?
everybody.
I guess he sicked a bear on some kids
He
for
did.
calling
That was
another kid bald, which is
a dude. Yeah, an older guy bald. It was great.
real funny.
One of the good chapters.
It really is.
One of the former county commissioners, I guess a reporter called her up like, hey, what do you think about this? And here's what she
get them
said.
all on the fucking
get them
record.
on the record. Here's what she said. Well, I think that hit a nerve talking about the pledge and the prayer thing. She said, talking about Emily, she hit the Christians, the churchgoers, and the veterans. I don't know how, with the pledge.
The pledge.
I don't know how you can alienate so many people in just one meeting.
I mean, oh boy, I don't even know what to say. Such a big chunk of me is like, yeah, this was an absolute inevitability. Maybe you should have slow played it. But no, absolutely not, girl. Do your fucking thing. You're in the right. The Constitution has your back.
There was one more meeting, and of course, this time the mob comes out to make a public comment about how offensive she is.
I'm a Christian, so everyone's a Christian. This is how logic works.
Yeah, one guy says basically tells her you should be recalled because you took an oath to upstand the flag, his exact words, and you mock it and throw it in our faces.
She didn't. B, upstand a flag is nothing.
Yes, and then a high school senior in the area says you need to respect these men, talking about the veterans. Yes, talking about the veterans.
Fucking. Oh, good.
So anyway, she was nice enough to answer my messages. And so we ended up talking. And I love this person.
Yeah, of course.
She's amazing.
The best.
And one of the things she pointed out, she's like, she is not us in terms of the activism thing. She is genuinely a good person who happens to just be... One, she's personally not that religious.
Right.
But two, she's like, I'm a city council member. I got to look out for everybody.
Well, not those everybody's,
and
Emily.
She's like, she's very much not trying to shove, trying to be anti-American or shove anything down anyone's throats. She's saying a third of our city is Christian. The rest are not. But the council's practices treat it like it's 100%. And she has gotten a lot of feedback from people who feel seen and heard.
Good for her.
And she also said, she genuinely did not see the backlash coming. She genuinely thought that if she expressed her concerns politely, calmly, then her colleagues would understand and act accordingly. Not so much.
Wow.
And she doesn't mind if people are upset. She doesn't mind if they're speaking out against her. But I just hope she's safe. Nothing has happened yet to the dude who wrote the letter, as far as I can tell.
Can I just predict the future for a second?
Would you like to?
Nothing's gonna happen. I'm sorry, I blacked out. Did I say anything?
No.
Sometimes spirits move through me. Okay.
So here's the one thing, though. If they keep the prayers going, which they are, that means anyone in the city of Owosso who's not Christian can legally say, I want to give an invocation. And if you happen to be a Muslim or a Satanist or an atheist or anything like that, now's your chance, people.
I mean,
they love your prayers. They want them really badly. Stay away from Tom.
Michigan, how far away is it? Can we take a roadie?
Go for it. I can't remember where in the state it is. I would break out my hand and show you.
Yeah,
the
I wouldn't trust it if you could. Oh, it's pretty far north. It's north of Lansing.
Long trip.
Up by Flint.
Okay, I'm going to jump to a different story because this one actually made me
really
smile. It's
really pretty this time of year. We should maybe...
It's not bad. You may want to put on your headphones for this one, though.
Oh, okay.
Here's the story. You guys may have all heard about this one, that recently the White House passed a bill that basically repeals the Defense of Marriage Act, that stupid bill. And it basically says no matter what Clarence Thomas and the Supreme Court decide to do, if they decide... Obergefell no longer applies and marriage is left up to the states, then some states are going to be like, no more same-sex marriage in our state. The law would say if you are in a same-sex marriage when it was legal, and it is, then it's still valid. And if you get married in a state where it's legal, that marriage will be valid even if you go to Mississippi.
In any other state.
So that's what the new law is. And during the debate that went on about that law, one of the Republicans who was very upset about it was Vicky Hartzler, who is from Missouri. And basically, she's like, this is horrible. It's misguided. It's dangerous. There are so many Christian right activists who are like, this bill impedes upon nothing. The answer is nothing. Because no church will have to do any of this stuff.
This is the crying lady
yes.
then her nephew?
And I even have the clip for you. But the best part about Vicky Hartzler crying isn't just the Vicky Hartzler crying clip. It's that for the second time, because this happened like 2 years ago where she spoke out against marriage equality.
Is the second time?
And her nephew is like, that's my aunt. She's a bigot. And I forgot about that kid for a while.
And he himself is gay, so
he is gay. But he made a TikTok responding to her crying. I want to play that for you now.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Here is Andrew Hartzler, her nephew, talking about her.
Today, a United States Congresswoman, my Aunt Vicky, started crying because gay people like me can get married.
I hope and pray that my colleagues will find the courage to join me in opposing this misguided and this dangerous bill. So dramatic.
So, despite coming out to my aunt this past February, I guess she's still just as much as a homophobe.
Let's be clear. Obergefell is not in danger, but people and institutions of faith are.
Aunt Vicky, that's not right. Institutions of faith like religious universities are not being silenced. They're being empowered by the US government to discriminate against tens of thousands of LGBTQ students because of religious exemptions, but they still receive federal funding.
The bill's implications: submit to our ideology or be silenced.
It's more like you want the power to force your religious beliefs onto everyone else. And because you don't have that power, you feel like you're being silenced. But you're not. You're just gonna have to learn to coexist with all of us. And I'm sure it's not that hard.
That was the end of his TikTok.
So good.
He's awesome.
What a sweet boy.
And again, the shocking thing about that is I realized when I was watching that, wait a minute, this guy sounds familiar. Oh, yeah, this happened before. And if you're looking for more about this kid, Andrew Hartzler, there are interviews with him. There are articles about him because everyone was like, "Oh, really? Vicky Hartzler's nephew, who shares her name, is speaking out against it."
Her name.
And so I do appreciate that every time she goes full bigot, reporters go to this kid.
Yeah,
he's like 20 or something, but they go to him and they're like, "Give us comment," and he's like, "I'm here for you."
Yeah, truly,
he's awesome. So good on him.
That must be so satisfying too.
Especially because the bill passed and then Joe Biden signed it into law. So more power to
day for
him.
Everybody. Congratulations to our queer people for no longer being one stroke of a pen away from you losing more constitutional rights than you already have. Congrats to us all, I guess.
Let's go to this other story that involves the After School Satan Club, which we've talked about before, but basically, if you're not familiar with it, these ass clubs, they do not promote Satan or satanic beliefs or Satanism or anything like it. After School Satan Clubs are basically saying, hey, there are elementary schools, public elementary schools, that legally host good news clubs, which are basically Christian evangelism indoctrination clubs. And if the districts allow those clubs to meet at elementary schools and they follow the rules, they have a parent who's sponsoring it maybe, or a student interested, all that's fine. But if you open that door, then other religious groups get to have their club too, if there's enough interest and they meet the guidelines.
Satanism.
Enter Satanism. So After School Satan Club was planning. So what do they do at these clubs? It's not about indoctrination. They say on their website, we focus on free inquiry and rationalism, the scientific basis for which we know what we know about the world around us. It's a science club with like a devilish twist. They do art projects. They learn about compassion. Like if I didn't tell you it was After School Satan Club, you'd be like, oh, it's like an after school arts science club. Cute, whatever. But the fun is the name of it. And if it rubs you the wrong way, that's on you because you don't know what it's all about. So there's a good news club in Virginia's Chesapeake Public Schools at a place called Williams Primary School.
Okay.
So here comes the after school Satan Club. And they say, we want to set up shop at your school. We followed all the guidelines. We have a parent in the district who wants to, basically we have a local
Co-sign,
resident who wants to co-sign on this. And the district looked at the paperwork and they basically said, doesn't matter what we think. You did everything you were supposed to do. We're not allowed to say no. So whatever, doesn't matter. That's how it should go. There was a little snag a week ago because that parent who co-signed the paperwork said, I want out for personal reasons.
Okay.
But the Satanists, basically the Satanic Temple said, that's fine. We actually have another parent who's willing to co-sign. And so we just got to start the process over. They did it. They resubmitted the application. And so the question is, will the district give it a green light now?
Yeah.
It should be the same process. Nothing has changed.
It should be a rubber stamp if they've done all the same things.
But this week, there was a board meeting
Oh, boy.
For the Chesapeake Public Schools board. By the way, I was told, have 13 kids signed up to attend that first meeting, which was supposed to be today, Thursday, as we're taping this. Supposed to be. But earlier this week, when they had the school board meeting, this is where people got angry. This has been in the news for a couple of months now because parents have started flipping out when they heard the name.
Sure.
They said all the things you expect. Here's one parent. I think there's a lot of controversy with that just because you don't really want that kind of stuff pushed on your child.
A really thoughtful and studied opinion.
Yes. I don't know if he's afraid of the crafts or the compassion part of it.
I think the second.
Another lady said, I could not believe that our schools would allow something like this. Satan. I just don't think that's the word kids need to hear.
Okay.
So congratulations to that mother on never attending church again. So this is what Christians have been doing for the past couple months. So on Monday, they had their board meeting.
So they've gotten rid of all the poor and hungry people?
Yes,
got that
they've
taken care of
every other issue,
Cool,
and now
got
the
it.
Christians are on this one.
Got it.
And a lot of the people making public comments to the school board, and they're allowed to make public comments, and the school board just has to sit there and take it. But a lot of them were saying this is hate speech, which
Hell not.
And one of the Satanic Temple volunteers said, my religion does not need your approval to exist. My beliefs are not subject to your approval. Empathy, reason, compassion for your fellow human beings. Satan is a rebel against tyranny and the ultimate questioner of authority. Those are the moral lessons we are basically teaching kids. So here's the deal. They go through all these Christians show up at the meeting. They say these really stupid things about why the Satanic Club should not be allowed there.
And everybody claps at the end anyway.
Everybody claps. Kevin Sorbo, I'm sure, shows up.
Oh, my goodness.
I assume.
Does a victory lap.
Yes.
Does a backflip.
But here's the thing. So afterwards, the school board, they're not voting or anything. They're just taking this all in. There is an open question on, will you give the resubmitted application a green light? And here's what they get to.
I'm nervous.
The superintendent of the district said that we need to do some further review and a safety assessment before making a decision about rubber stamping this resubmitted application.
Physical safety?
Yeah.
Are they not using safety scissors for their crafts?
Right? So what is a safety assessment? For what? Because there's no reason to think the kids who would attend this club are in danger.
Yeah.
There's no reason to think the people running the Satanic Club are in danger.
For speech team, do you have to run a safety test to make sure kids can do all those funny voices at the same time without their heads exploding?
Nothing
Is
like
that what
it.
speech is?
Not even close. But the Satanists had no reason. There's no reason to think anyone involved is doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
Really, all the threats that were being made, and there were threats, they were by the Christians. The Christians said it was evil.
I'm noticing a theme in this episode.
Right. If anyone's going to take measures into their own hands, it's going to be some deranged Christian. And here's the thing that really tipped it for the school board. Let's say they want to do everything right and legal, because that's what it looked like up to this point.
Yeah.
Last month, you may have seen this in the news, horrible. In Chesapeake, a man who worked at a Walmart shot and killed 6 people, a lot of his colleagues working the overnight shift there. It was like a mass murder that I think happened right after Club Q, and it's like, oh no, the second mass murder got overshadowed by the first mass murder, something like that.
Cool.
But that guy who did the shooting, they found a note on his phone, like an explanation, a manifesto of sorts. And one of the things he wrote in there was, I promise things just fell in place like I was being led by the Satan. And he also made a lot of reference to God told me to do this. God was telling me all this.
Satan.
He made like more than a dozen references to God in his note. And he said, I was being led by Satan to do the thing I'm about to do, which is really bad. Once. And all these people, a lot of the people making public comments at the school board meeting is like, well, that's what a Satanist does. No, honey, that's what a Christian does who believes in Satan. But you get the point. Like, they're all thinking that shooter had some connection to Satan. These Satanists want to come into our schools. And all the people involved in the after-school Satan Club are like, we have nothing to do with that guy. You're closer to that guy because you share his beliefs. We don't believe in Satan. They're trying to explain all this.
Right. Well, and also, if that guy had not mentioned the word Satan anywhere, they would give no credence to him being led by God, right? Nobody would be like, see, God is trying to kill us all.
But so even despite no connections, the school board referenced the shooting before saying, we just want to evaluate safety concerns.
Do they do that for all the Christian
they
groups?
do
Because
not.
Lots of mass shootings are done by Christians.
Right. Lucian Greaves, the Satanic Temple spokesperson, I asked him for comment, and he basically summarized the school board's response by basically, he imitated what they were saying. We're not denying you equal access to a public forum. We are protecting you from what we'll do to you if you use the public forum by preventing you from using it. So
pretty funny.
If that's an exaggeration, it's not by much because, they're basically caving in to the threats made by the Christians in the community.
I mean, it does reek of everyone's created equal. Some are just more equal than others. Yeah. Like, it does reek of that.
It's not hard to see this school board saying, we did a safety assessment, and for that reason that we're worried for the safety of the kids, we're going to say no to your group. Not because of your beliefs, but because we're worried about the safety.
Can I make a prediction? It's really dark. I think they're going to deny it because they are worried about the threats from the community against the Satan Club. And so they're not going to approve the Satan Club because Christians are being too threatening. And that's what the danger is going to be.
So
that's
I will
my
say,
prediction.
The Satanic Temple said, we're waiting for the safety process to finish. Our next meeting, the second meeting was scheduled for like the end of January. They don't do this all the time. Every couple of months. They said, all right, fine. Our next meeting is January 26th. We got time. We will wait to see what the board does. And if the board says no, there's a good chance the Satanic Temple, they didn't tell me this, I'm predicting, they could file a lawsuit saying you're denying us equal access. And this safety thing is just a ruse to get around that. But just keep it in mind.
That would be
Interesting
hard
thing.
to prove in court, don't you think?
I don't know. They have a lot of emails saying like, yep, you filled out all the paperwork correctly. There's no reason to think they're connected to anything.
Especially if nothing's changed between the last Satan Club and the new one.
All right.
Interesting.
Let me give a shout out to our sponsor for this episode. If you enjoy blasphemous humor, it turns out God has a podcast. It's called The God Pod, and it's co-hosted by God and Jesus, or I guess solo hosted if I have my Christian theology right. God's basically tired of everyone taking cheap shots at him, and he wants to set the record straight. Along the way, he speaks with his buddies, as well as comedians, scientists, and other people who will probably spend eternity in hell. And that includes me. I was on an earlier episode debating God. Naturally, I won. And I also enjoyed another episode where he basically damns the Supreme Court for overturning Roe v. Wade. You will have to listen to learn why that made him angry. You can't go wrong with adding the God Pod to your rotation. It is incredibly funny. There's never a dull show. Just search for the God Pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, let me jump to this story from our buddy Louie Gohmert. Do you remember Louie Gohmert?
The name rings a bell, but I can't
He is a
place it.
Texas congressman.
Oh boy.
And
State congressman?
No, like Marjorie Taylor Greene congressman type.
Oh boy.
From Texas. He's been there forever. He is everything MAGA, every election denying, every global warming is a hoax sort of thing. That's Louie Gohmert. And he talks exactly like you think he talks.
Like Foghorn Leghorn?
There you go.
Yay.
And actually, I will say, before I get into the story, he said he was going to retire from Congress because he was going to run for Attorney General of Texas, and then he got clobbered in the GOP primary.
Oh, God, he didn't even get through the primary.
Nope. And so he will be gone from Congress next month. But on Monday this week, Gohmert was giving a general speech on the floor of the U.S. House. As many Congress people they're allowed to do it. They speak about whatever's on their mind, whatever, because it's like in the records and like you're on C-SPAN. Congrats. And he gave this 25-minute speech, which normally this is one of those things where you tune out. There's nothing there to listen to. And honestly, this didn't even cross my radar at first.
Okay.
But here's what he said. He basically said, you know, I have a friend named Tommy Nelson who runs the Denton Bible Church in Denton, Texas. And Tommy sometimes jokes about how he would one day give a sermon when I get to speak to Congress. And this is what I would say if I got to speak in front of Congress. And what Louie Gohmert said is, well, Tommy isn't going to get that chance because that's not how it works. You can't just speak to Congress. But I'm in Congress. So I asked him, what would you like to say to Congress? And I will deliver the message for you.
Okay.
So here is the message Tommy wants to tell all of you. And it won't surprise you that a lot of it is Christian nationalist rhetoric.
Of course.
A lot of anti-gay bigotry about like marriage has to be protected, whatever. A belief that if everyone just believes in the Christian God, all of society's problems would be solved. And at one point, he explained, this is what Gohmert says, quoting, I think, Tommy Nelson, without God and his word to guide man, his fallen nature is unleashed. And unlike nature, man has become more and more immoral, violent, ignorant, and cruel. So we all need the Christian God, is what he's getting at. And the reason that didn't register is I'm like, all right, it's like a conservative Christian nationalist type doing a sermon. I mean, it shouldn't happen, but it happens. I've heard it. The reason that name didn't ring a bell, though, like this is, someone had to point out to me, like, no, that name should ring a bell.
Okay.
Here's why that name has rung a bell. After I looked into it, I'm like, oh my God, it's this guy. Who is Tommy Nelson of Denton Bible Church? Tommy Nelson made news like not that long ago, and I think we talked about him on this show because his church, this Denton Bible Church, is like a hotbed of allegations and abuse. And Tommy Nelson is right at the center of it. So here's what Gohmert somehow did not mention anywhere in his speech, that a former youth pastor at the church was repeatedly accused of sexual abuse and in 2021 was sentenced to 33 months in prison because for sexually assaulting two girls on church trips.
Oof.
And here's the thing. He didn't mention that Tommy Nelson, upon hearing about all this, the charges against his former colleague, he commissioned a third-party investigation into the matter, as he had to do pretty much, and that report found that, oh no, it wasn't just those two girls, it was 14 girls, and 11 of them were at Denton Bible Church, Tommy Nelson's church. And the report also said church leaders knew about these allegations, but never took them seriously. Like at one time, like years ago, they said, we need you to write an apology letter to the child. And then he didn't do it and no one cared. That's how they handled allegations of sexual abuse.
Wait, can we just, while we're sitting in this misery, can we just trace back to the last story we did about if everybody was Christian, nothing bad would ever happen?
That was Tommy Nelson. That was a Tommy Nelson original, too.
So.
Just and then Gohmert did not mention that.
Just wondering.
I heard it.
Just wondering.
Tommy Nelson's church also refused to give that guy in particular a job as a high school pastor, youth pastor, in 2001, quote, because of his pattern of being alone with girls. Like they knew there was something up with this guy.
Okay.
But they never made that public.
No.
And they definitely did not share that information with other churches because guess what? That guy later got a job as a youth pastor in another state. Why? Because there was a recommendation letter from Tommy Nelson.
Took a note from the old Catholic Church, eh?
And then the abuse of children continued.
Oh, that's so strange.
After
so
that.
Wait. A church leader had the power to make sure a man who has a history of abusing children in his care.
They put a stop to it.
He knew that was happening, and then instead of stopping more children from being abused, what he did was, I'm sorry, could you repeat? He wrote a letter of recommendation.
Recommendation. Yes, to this dude.
Okay.
And then, so I'm sorry, Gohmert didn't say any of that in his 25-minute speech. What he did say was Pastor Tommy Nelson was full of, quote, profound truth. And that truth can only come from a higher power.
What does profound truth mean?
Like, it's not just the facts. It's facts that only God can stick in your head. I don't know.
I would just think that, like, kind of truth is truth. Kind of putting a hat in a hat.
Yeah, but the MAGA people have better truths.
I guess.
Truth social, even.
I thought they were supposed to be self-evident, but I'm really having a hard time.
Sorry, they don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Uh-huh. All right. Different. Here's a somewhat happier story.
Good.
Maybe. Could be. There is, that Alcoholics Anonymous is famous for having religious rules in their 12 steps.
Please refer to my interview with Mike Flanagan about his exploration of AA as an atheist. It was the best 2 hours of my entire life.
There you go. So one of the first 12 steps, you got to give I think it's the first, give yourself over to a God or a power greater than ourselves.
Well, and there's the prayer is a huge part of it.
Yeah. So Alcoholics Anonymous, again, if it works for you, it works for you, but it is a religious organization. And the problem is sometimes courts will tell someone, listen, you have this addiction. We need you to go through a treatment program. And until you go through the treatment program, you're not going to get your life back or whatever it is you need to go on with your life.
Teaching license, driver's license, whatever it is.
And so that's fine. Courts can mandate that people go through treatment programs.
Sure.
The problem in New York specifically is that in a lot of cases, New York judges only offer AA as the alcohol treatment program.
You said this is New York?
New York specifically. And that's a problem because if you're non-religious or not Christian, maybe that doesn't work for you. We just covered a story not that long ago about a United Airlines pilot who was struggling with alcohol addiction.
And he's Hindu?
Buddhist.
Buddhist.
And he basically said, listen, I can't do Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm fine with your thing that says I got to go through a treatment program to get my pilot's license back. But I'm Buddhist. There is a Buddhist alternative to AA that mandates, that has hits all the same marks, has all the same data. It works. Can I just do that instead? And at first, American United Airlines is like, nope.
Right.
And there was a lawsuit, and they just settled. And United Airlines said, fine, you can do your other one.
Fine,
we're not going to hold that
obey
against
the Constitution.
So anyway,
hate it.
in New York, they're sometimes only telling people you have to do AA. So it turns out in New York last year, fully aware of this issue, the only openly non-theistic member of New York's state legislature, his name is Harvey Epstein, he sponsored a bill saying, look, I'm going to paraphrase the bill because it's a lot of words, basically says, if you have to mandate that, you have to offer people an alternative if they don't want the religious option.
Yeah.
Right.
Fair.
Right?
Reasonable.
Shouldn't even be a problem.
Correct. And yet?
Well, earlier this year, that bill passed in the General Assembly, their version of the State House.
Okay.
It wasn't even close, 99-47. In June, it passed in the State Senate, 49-14. Okay. That bill, as of this week, it's gone through all the paperwork side of things. Now it sits on Governor Kathy Hochul's desk.
Okay.
She has 265 passed pieces of legislation sitting on her desk. Listen, and this is every governor has to do something like this where it's the end of the year. Here are the bills for you to sign or veto or do whatever it is you're going to do with them. And she hasn't signed this one yet. That doesn't mean there's anything weird about it or anything going on.
Yeah.
But she hasn't signed it yet. And she should, because there's nothing controversial about this. I'm going to read from Epstein's blog post about this on his website. The purpose of this legislation is to ensure that New Yorkers in recovery are matched with treatment programs and support meetings that align with their personal beliefs.
Now that
Right?
is common
Simple.
sense.
And he also says this bill would seek to avoid costly lawsuits that people are going to bring against us because we're not doing this. So, like, it's a win-win for everybody.
Foresight. You
We're-
love to
Right?
see it.
Sensible legislation. Hochul is trying to, I'm not saying she's progressive in any way, but she is a Democrat. There's no reason she shouldn't sign it. Every church-state separation group have called for her to pass this bill.
Good.
Even secular alternative recovery programs like Smart Recovery
Sure.
have said, yeah, pass this bill. It's a good idea.
Is there any kind of, I've never thought about this before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there any kind of lobbyist for like big AA? Like, how?
For Alcoholics Anonymous, not so
Yeah.
much.
Is
I think
it just the only game in town for so long that
and they don't
never
know there's
occurred
anything else.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, if the goal
So
is
it's
like,
not like glad-handing a bunch of people of like, hey, keep AA
Right.
the only recovery option.
there's no one with AA lobbyist hats up there. But I think for a lot of people, they assume it works.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, there's plenty of people who will tell you it does not for them.
I think famously,
But
does not work
also,
very well
they don't
long-term.
realize there are other alternatives or that AA is religious. They just assume it's
Sure.
fine.
That's a
And
good
it's
point.
like, no, you don't understand. There are problems with it. But again, no one's asking for leniency on this. They're saying, look, if you want data-driven treatment programs, AA is not the only game in town. And if we have a problem with the religious aspects of a program, tell us about it. Oh, the bill would require judges to ask them, do you have a problem with the religious elements of stuff in this program? And if you do,
Oh.
can we give you, we'll get you an
that's
alternative
interesting.
thing. It's fine. It's a good bill.
Sure.
It shouldn't hurt anybody. I have yet to see any Christian group arguing against it, which is kind of surprising. Maybe it's under their radar. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like
But-
the Christians don't necessarily use AA as their like biggest
Yeah.
arm. I don't think it's kind
Thank
of a quiet
goodness
one.
Franklin Graham doesn't have a recovery program, or else this
Oh
would
boy,
be.
could you imagine?
God.
It'd be so boring.
This is a troubling story out of Franklin Academy, which is a public charter school in Florida.
Oh boy.
And here's what
boy.
happened.
Charter
And
schools in Florida.
charter
Yikes
school,
on bikes.
You know this isn't going to end well. I guess 3 Muslim students at the school were looking for a place during the day to say their prayers. And usually if this happens at a public school, they've already worked it out with the administrators. Like, is there a private place we can go? Like an empty classroom, an office.
Yeah, we had accommodations for that in my
Yep.
my high school for
We'll
sure.
break out our mats. We'll do our prayer. We'll be on our way. It's like it's not a hard accommodation to make for anybody. It's fine. At this school, I guess these kids were in some office, and you see a video of these boys praying on the floor, on their knees, and all of a sudden you see a woman walk into the room, basically disrupting them. I'm paraphrasing here, but like, what is going on in my office? How dare you are here? She also said, I believe in Jesus, so I'm
No.
interrupting the floor.
No, this cunt. Are you out of your mind?
And then she's like,
She
I'm not allowing this magic in here. Like, you're a Christian. What are you talking
fucking
about?
asshole.
Yeah. The school, like that day, once this video. And by the way, why was there video of this?
That's
you
exactly
wonder.
what I was about to ask.
I don't know the answer
Is
to
it
that.
security footage?
No.
Is it the boys recorded themselves?
The boys recorded themselves probably because they knew this was going to happen. And I wonder if that's because this
It's
sort of
happened
thing has happened before. And they're like, you know what? We're just going to set up our phone.
They weren't just doing it for the gram?
There's nothing I have seen that suggests they were doing this because they thought it would go viral.
I truly thought you were going to say doing it for the gram.
Right. I think that would cheapen their faith, and I don't think they seem to be the sort of people who are interested in doing that, but they did want to capture this woman on camera doing
and
this
isn't
thing.
it a stark difference in how Muslim students have to celebrate their religion versus Christians who
Yeah.
think that just by showing up and being white, everyone has to listen to them, and the fucking cluelessness in the year of our Lord 2022 to think it's okay to interrupt students praying. Are you out
Religious
of your fucking
freedom for
gourd?
only me.
And so she got fired immediately.
Well, so that night, the school posts a message on Facebook. Earlier today, a very troubling TikTok video was shared with our leadership team. At Franklin, we do not tolerate discriminatory behavior in any form. While we do not discuss personnel matters, we can share that the teacher in question is no longer a member of our staff, yada, yada, yada. Okay. There were some questions I still have. What would have happened if this was not caught on video?
Nothing.
Then nothing would have happened, right?
Nothing.
Like these
and
kids.
that's why nothing's happening to, I'm sure, dozens and hundreds of places around the country that this exact thing is happening to.
I still don't have an answer to this. What's the school going to do to prevent incidents like this in the future? They didn't answer that yet. Why don't these students have a safe space where they can worship without being interrupted? Why hasn't the school made that accommodation already? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, it sounds like they did, and this woman kind of blew up their spot.
Yeah, it's not clear. One person, like I was reading the TikTok comments on this video, because the question is like, well, why are you in this office? Because the lady who barged in and got mad about it,
Said it was her office.
She seemed to say, why are you in here? You shouldn't be in here.
Oh.
That's me talking, not her. But the question was like, well, why were you in that office in particular? And one of the comments left by the student who posted the video was that 2 teachers allowed us into the room that we were in. And he said everything was fine until that lady walked in. So take that as you will.
So I wonder how long this has been happening.
I don't know. And why were they filming this? Is it because this sort of thing has happened before? I don't know. And again, what would conservatives be saying if a Muslim was caught on camera interrupting a Christian student who was privately praying during the school day?
Absolutely not.
Right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, just completely crazy. Even now, days later, the school has not said how it plans to address this matter. I mean, it's basic religious tolerance. It's not that complicated.
Yeah.
This is an interesting story from British Columbia, where this was a lawsuit I heard about so many years ago, and I didn't realize it was still ongoing. And then someone's like, there's a decision now. So I'm like, what's going on here? Here's the story. There was a Christian mother in British Columbia who said her kids at school were illegally forced to participate in an Indigenous smudging ritual at the school.
Excuse me, could you repeat that again?
Yeah. She's a Christian mother. Her kids go to this, don't ask me Canadian details here, but they were forced to participate in some Indigenous ritual that involved putting smudges on your body.
Okay.
And she sued over this years ago. Basically, this mother found out her kids would be attending a school-sponsored, like, traditional Aboriginal smudging ceremony. Cool. The school's version of this is, we want to make sure we're being inclusive of all of our students. We have a lot of students who are Indigenous and have that history and that culture, so we want to introduce it. It's like showing students, this is what Jewish people do during this part of the year. And like, we're going to show it to you. That doesn't mean we're saying you got to be a part of this. We want to make sure you're educated about it. That's the school's version of the story.
It's a school and they educate people, and that's sort of the whole thing.
And the mother's claim was that her kids had to hold up a cedar branch while sage smoke wafted over them as part of a cleansing ritual.
Wait.
That's what she said. She said, no, this wasn't educating them. You were indoctrinating them. They were participating in the ritual.
I'm just curious where the sage smoke came from if they were burning a cedar branch, but that's neither here nor there.
I have no idea. But the lawsuit basically said, the law says you can't have religion in the classroom. It's basic religious freedom type of stuff.
Yeah.
So this is the lawsuit I heard about years ago. The school always said we did everything above board. We were teaching kids about religion.
Yeah.
We were not indoctrinating them. Maybe we could have made it more clear that all of this was optional if you wanted to join or participate.
What age was this for?
I think it's a younger school.
Like elementary-ish?
Yeah,
Okay.
but basically this went court to court to court. And now a court of appeal in British Columbia issued basically a huge blow to the mother. What they said is, this is definitely not religious indoctrination.
Whoa.
She had said, I can't pay the court costs because I don't have any money. But
sucks to suck.
When the other side said, but she's not the one that brought this lawsuit, like, imagine like Liberty Counsel or ADF like takes over your case, like one of those right-wing groups controls your case.
But then you're on the hook for In theory,
in
is that what
her
the problem
case,
is?
she's saying, I don't have any money, I can't pay it. And everyone's like, well, why don't you ask the people that brought this case on her behalf? And the courts are like, oh, yeah, this
was
woman
it?
didn't bring it's some right-wing group
Oh.
in Canada. And they're like, oh, you guys do have money. You have to pay the school for the
Good.
6 years you just dragged them through the courts. So that's one
Yay.
thing.
That's
But this is
fun.
where it gets really fun. The judge basically looked at all the evidence and said that narrative the mother was spinning this whole time, like almost none of it holds up.
Really?
So
You
after
mean sage smoke doesn't come out of cedar? That's so
well,
strange.
they said the judge concluded that the mere presence, the kids being present at the smudging demonstration, none of that interfered with her religious beliefs. They also said children were not participating in the smudging, but that they were observing it as part of a lesson about others' beliefs. Where did she get this idea that kids were participating in it? It seemed like in some cases her daughter said, well, they told us we all had to do it. And the judge looks into it and they're like, no one told the
oh
kids
my
they
God,
had to
this
do
is
it.
like satanic panic
Uh-huh,
all over
uh-huh.
again.
Yeah. The daughter's evidence of the sage smoke giving them luck, was that there was so much smoke and it was getting hard to breathe and she couldn't see. And she said the daughter said she told her teacher she wanted to leave, but the teacher wouldn't let her leave. And the judge
sounds like
said,
teachers.
this evidence as to the nature and extent of the smudging, the ritual, was directly contradicted by others present.
Whoa.
So basically, your daughter doesn't know what she's talking about, lady.
So they're saying these are lies. Like this is false.
They're saying we don't have evidence to confirm any of this, and your
Yeah.
whole case
Yeah.
is built on the
On
fact
this.
that the school forced your kids to do this. There is no reason to believe that. So the school is fine.
Yeah.
What they did was legal. And also, we realize your people have money, and so you're going to have to pay for the court costs.
So had this financial situation not happened that they can access that money,
I mean-
would the school have been on the hook?
Then the school would have had to pay their own way for a lot of this stuff. This is
Jesus
why they appealed some of this stuff. They're like, look, if
Good.
we made any mistakes, that's one thing. But you're making us pay money for this frivolous thing that this lady
Yeah.
did. And she's not like some nobody here. Like they have money. And the judge said, yeah, she has to pay.
Yeah.
I'm not telling the entire story. There are more details to this if you're interested in the details, but I'm afraid I'm going to screw it up. But that is the gist of the case. Fascinating story there.
Wow.
And I have one more I want to leave with you here, which is it's another Canadian story, but I have to do this one. The Archdiocese of Montreal, they have also, like every other archdiocese, had child sexual abuse scandals. But here's the thing, like last year, one of the ways they were dealing with their scandal is that the archdiocese basically appointed an ombudsperson last year. Basically, some newspapers, like the New York Times that are really big, they might hire a public editor. And the person's job is, you're in charge of being the watchdog for our paper. So if we fuck up, you have access to all of us.
Okay.
You have access to the editor-in-chief.
honest.
You keep us honest, and you're on our payroll, but we will give you this. We're not going to edit you.
Yeah.
You can write whatever you want about us, and we're paying you because I think you provide a service. They don't have
so-
that anymore, but they should.
So they write.
They might say, you know what?
Up
Our
until-
newspaper wrote a lot about, here's an example of what a good public editor would have done.
Okay.
We have a political reporter at the New York Times who just said, we can't figure out what Elon Musk's beliefs are about politics.
here's the
it's hard-
evidence
Yeah,
that-
but
okay.
no, he's a right-wing hack. Here's how we know that, and it's irresponsible of our paper to have published this thing without looking into what's obviously
Okay,
there.
that's
What a good
interesting.
public editor would do, and the New York Times couldn't stop the public editor from writing that. That's ideally what would happen. So in the case of the Archdiocese of Montreal, after the sex abuse scandal, one of the things they did is they said, we will hire someone to be a watchdog for our archdiocese and give her access to whatever she needs to do whatever investigations. Because
woman, huh?
Yeah, we want to be transparent.
Sure.
That was their pitch. We want to be transparent. We want everyone to feel safe around us. So we hired this person. So they hired this woman, Marie Christine Kirouac, who I think has a great resume, was a lawyer, something like that. Like, she knows what she's doing. There's no problem there. She starts digging into stuff. Well, this week she released a
is my
report.
dream
I know, right?
job.
Like, just dig into the Catholic Church and figure it out.
God.
Well, one of the things she was doing is digging into older allegations that have maybe not yet been made public for
Cool.
whatever reason. And she realized she was hitting roadblocks. And this is from a CBC article. Although the complaint process is supposed to be confidential, like if you say someone abused me and you want to report that to the church, you're confidential. Kerouac said a priest, the person who did it, the allegation was made against, who was not named in her report, was sharing emails with someone outside the Archdiocese. The emails revealed the names of the people complaining, the names of the people who were subjects of the complaints, and like exchanges they had with some external investigation firm. A lot of confidential information this priest was just sending out into the world.
Sure.
Shouldn't have done that.
Absolutely not.
But okay, that's one dude doing something stupid.
Right.
She also learned
There's
that
a
the
lot of
same
those guys in the Catholic Church.
she also learned that the same priest had failed to notify her about one complaint, and in another told the person making the allegations not to contact the lawyer. Don't tell her about this. Basically, there is a priest in the Archdiocese who is sabotaging her efforts to keep them honest. Yeah. And she knows who it is. Like, they didn't name the priest, but like they know who the priest is.
His name.
But basically, she said there were allegations that were not followed up in a timely manner. Some suspensions and investigations were delayed. This is not one priest.
No.
Basically, this archdiocese, which hired her to be their watchdog, is still being shady the entire way through.
So sorry.
And that's the thing. Now, she says, I'm staying in this job. I'm going to make this institution a better place.
Good for
But
her.
also the report basically shows she can't do a thorough investigation.
Because they're not giving her access.
Because they're not giving her access. I don't
So
know
it's
how
like
you have
this
hope in the process then.
Faux transparency that they think they can be like, see, we're all doing it. But I mean, and then depending on her being incompetent or also corrupt, which is honestly in their game pretty fair. But looks like they ran up against the wrong gal.
This is the same archdiocese, to give you some history, by the way. In 2017, they instituted a new rule that priests and volunteers cannot work with children alone. You guys, we cannot trust any of us in this place to work with kids, even after we pass a digital background check.
I mean,
We cannot be alone with kids. By the
look
way,
in the mirror, Catholic Church. Jesus.
this same lawyer lady, Kerouac, in her last report, in her latest report, she wrote this, and this is interesting because a lot of times you hear of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, and the church has made this point again and again. A lot of the cases you hear about in the news, they stem back from like decades and decades ago. The priests who committed the crimes have long been dead.
yeah.
They make that point over and over. This is an old
The
problem
victims are
you're all
grown
bringing
and
up.
able to cope
Yes.
with it, yeah.
And of course, one of the responses is, yeah, it may have happened a long time ago, but these victims are living with it today.
Sure.
So you owe them
There's
something.
no statute of limitations.
But Kerouac said in her latest report that since she was appointed to this job in May of 2021, a little over a year ago, there have been 64 complaints of abuse, 41 of which concern sexual abuse. Yeah, fresh ones. These are not decades old. These are still happening today, she's saying. And she's investigating them, and when they need to, they will turn it over to the police and all that. But the point is, this is not old. This is happening today, or at least the allegations are coming today.
Yeah.
Depending on, you have to vet them. You should check them. But just the fact that these are not going away completely. So there's the Catholic Church for you. I'll stop
it's so
there.
impressive, that like they act like they're gonna do all the right things and still fuck it up. It's just so predictable.
What are we going to talk about in the bonus?
I have a couple things written down.
Yeah.
I think, we talked about Survivor last night. We should probably talk about it a little bit for people who care.
We did not talk about it for people with a microphone. We talked about it amongst ourselves.
Yeah, and what's the point of that? That's not
Why
even a
would
real
anyone have a conversation that is not recorded and broadcast to the masses?
We're also going to talk about White Lotus.
Ooh, yeah. Oh, I have thoughts.
Yeah.
I saw a thing finally. Look at me.
What'd you see?
White Lotus.
Oh,
When
I
do
see.
I ever watch
I
a
thought you were
thing?
going to say a second thing, and I would have been
No, it's all good.
astounded.
You know what I tried? That chat AI bot, the chat GPT.
I don't know what that is.
I will tell you all about it.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about braiding your daughter's hair
Ah!
because she was having children allowed and fast. Just real
Yes.
zippy little guys.
Yes, they're
very,
called kids.
They're very cute and fun. I like them a whole lot. And then actually before we go, I wanted to talk a little bit about, do you know, if you never watched So You Think You Can Dance, did you?
No, I know who you're talking about.
Okay, so there's this a man named Twitch who has been, I've been aware of him since like 2007, 2008 when he auditioned for So You Think You Can Dance, didn't get in, got in the next one, was like a fucking phenom, came back, became a wildly successful public personality. He was Ellen's DJ for better or worse, I guess. I don't know what that was like. Married another So You Think You Can Dance alum. They are like the two most beautiful people in the entire world, with three most beautiful children in the entire world that are like insanely adorable and talented already. But he took his own life this past week, and it's really shocked a lot of people, I think, because he was so joyful and exuberant and charismatic, and that can hide a lot of pain for people, especially when you're in the public eye and feel like you can't, I don't know, you can't really be yourself or like be three-dimensional. So I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that, acknowledge the loss that sort of the whole world, the dance community has. Fuck, he was in Magic Mike, XXL. He was incredible. Like, he is a phenomenal talent. He was a phenomenal talent. And obviously that's not the only thing to him. But I was just kind of shocked. It hit me really hard. I was looking up something else and that on Twitter, and that popped up, and it just sort of shook me up. And it kind of has stuck with me a little bit. Unfortunately, in this country, many people don't have easy access to therapy or mental health resources, and that's too bad. So the best I can offer is take care of yourself and take care of each other and talk to people you love. And we need you guys here. You're needed and you're loved. It was just it caught me by surprise. So anyway, you can 988 is the crisis hotline now. 988. It's for suicide hotline, other kind of crises.
Where do we find
all
you?
That is to say. You can find me on Twitter. I am at Jess Blumke. Hemant, where can we find you?
I'm at Hemant Met on Twitter for the next, 4 minutes until Elon has a hissy fit.
Apparently Hemant escaped a...
Well, I don't write about Elon much because he's not my beat, but like all these good journalists, including one who posts a lot of videos of politicians, totally fair. Like, here's what they said at the rally. Here's what they did. That guy got suspended. And this isn't a free speech First Amendment thing because it's a private company, but it is hypocritical for Elon's like, I'm all for free speech. Oh, you made fun of me? No.
He's such an idiot.
The wrong people have all the money.
Always. You can leave us a review if you want. Hey, recommend this to a friend if you want. Or don't. I don't care. You can leave us a review. This is from Happy Brain. Nope, that's the title. It's from Are You Hourly, which I assume is like a labor joke. I don't know. Happy Brain, 5 stars. As a diagnosed neurodivergent, the show makes my brain happy. Jessica's rapid-fire rants and background commentary behind... I've really been leaning into mumbling behind you. I think it's a funny bit. Everybody hates it but me. Behind Hemant's calmer structure and sarcasm result in a delightful mix. I get passion and structured chaos along with prescient humanist themes and important stories. Thanks, you guys. Oh, that was very sweet. I liked that a whole lot. Is that it?
That's it. We'll see you on the bonus for those of you who are supporting us at patreon.com/friendlyatheistpodcast.
Bye,
see you
gang.
next week.